And we're back. Welcome to another Premier League preview and predictions video. This is Game Week 36. Yes, just 3 weeks now to go in the Premier League season, but we are here to deliver all 10 preview and predictions once again. As always, I will start off my Premier League videos by just saying a massive thank you to all of our new and existing and upgrading members of the channel this week. So thank you to all of you guys on your screen right now. If you guys want to get involved, hit the join button at the bottom of your screen to gain access to exclusive La Liga preview and predictions. We had another really good round of La Liga preview and predictions last week, and my Game Week 35 preview and predictions have just gone live for members only right now on the channel. And don't forget that you guys can also get involved by dropping a like on this video and subscribing to the channel with notifications if you haven't done so already. Yesterday we posted our semi-final first leg preview and predictions for the EFL playoffs in the Championship, League 1 and League 2, and we will be covering all the remaining semi-finals and finals of those competitions on this channel as well, so make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on that. As for today though, this is the state of play in the Premier League. Not the best week in terms of Premier League predictions, only 4 out of 10, but we did get 1 correct score. And a good week in Europe does mean that our season results have done much better overall. Do I think we're going to manage to get 100 correct scores by the end of the season? Probably not. It's been a good effort though, but we shall see. As for this weekend though, we start off with Fulham against Everton, which is a 3 o'clock kickoff. There are no early kickoffs on Saturday. There's a bonus early kickoff on Sunday. All the games in the Premier League this weekend actually taking place on Saturday and Sunday. And like I say, the first game is between Fulham and Everton. So let's get straight into it. Fulham were dealt a massive blow in their race for Europe, going down 1-0 at Villa Park last weekend, which has seen them drop all the way down to 11th, but still just 2 points off 8th place, just to prove how tight things are in the race for Europe right now in the Premier League. For Everton, they could only manage a 2-2 draw at home to already relegated Ipswich, but to be fair, that goal from Enciso could have happened to absolutely anyone, and they are now up to 14th with results going their way in and around them. So not too bad for Everton. They also now have Dominic Calvert-Lewin back. He made his first appearance for a few months off the bench last week and could be pushing for a start in this one. For Fulham, it was sadly yet another injury for Harrison Reed. Apparently he could be in and around the squad for this one though, but he did pick up that injury last week, so I feel like it is still worth mentioning. What this means though is that I still think Fulham should be considered the favourites here. They're on a relatively good run of form. They're still obviously in the massive race for Europe. Everton not really playing for anything. It was also a 1-1 draw at Goodison Park earlier on this season. I do think it's going to be close though. I think Everton are more than capable of getting something from this game, but I just think with what's on the line, Fulham are going to have that little bit extra motivation to get the result. So I'm going to start this weekend's predictions with a 2-1 victory to Fulham. Next up, it is Ipswich, who, as we just heard, drew 2-2 away at Everton last week. And they are going to be taking on Brentford, who made it 3 wins in a row against Manchester United last week with a 4-3 victory at the G-Tech. That draw for Ipswich means they are now 5 games without a win. And as we keep saying, they are already relegated. And Brentford have moved themselves up to 9th in their race for Europe as things stand. So they've got a lot to play for here. Is it going to be a difficult game for them? I do think it is. Yes, Ipswich still have a lot of injury concerns. Thankfully for them, there are no fresh injury concerns coming into this one. But again, it doesn't look like any of their currently injured players are going to be back for this one. For Brentford, no fresh concerns for them either. Obviously, a lot of chatter this week surrounding players potentially leaving in the summer, the likes of Mbermo and Johan Visser. But for now, they're in the side. They're going to want to try and convince them to stay by qualifying for Europe. It was a 4-3 shock when these sides met at the G-Tech earlier on this season. I don't think this game is going to be as crazy, but I still think there's going to be a lot of goals. And I think the smart option is to still go for Brentford here with them in that battle for Europe. And I'm going to go for a 3-2 victory to Brentford. Next up, it is Southampton taking on Manchester City. For Southampton, it is now no wins in their last 12. And they lost to who were statistically the worst form team in the league, which was Leicester up until last week. Southampton are now statistically the worst team in the league again after losing to Leicester. For Manchester City, they are now unbeaten in their last 9 and they've won 5 in a row. They're up to 3rd. They can go level on points with Arsenal if they win this game. They're playing the worst team in the league. And they have Haaland back. And they have Akanji back. And they have Foden back. And they beat Southampton 1-0 at the Etihad. They only beat Southampton 1-0 at the Etihad earlier on this season. That's how bad City were playing. They only beat Southampton 1-0. Look, all jokes aside, Manchester City should win this game. Do I think Southampton can get something here? Absolutely. Manchester City only barely beat Wolves last week. It was only a 1-0 victory for them then. They're still not playing at their maximum, but with what's at stake for them, with what's at stake for Southampton, yes, they're trying to avoid the worst result in Premier League history, but I think Manchester City are going to win this. I don't think I need to say any more. I'm going to go for a 3-0 victory to Man City. Maybe could see Southampton getting themselves at least one goal, but I'm going to go for a clean sheet for City. 3-0 to them, which then leaves the final 3 o'clock kickoff as Wolves taking on Brighton. As we just mentioned, Wolves lost 1-0 at Manchester City last week, which did end their 6-game winning run, but they did have more big chances in the match than Manchester City did. So there was definitely opportunities for them to get the result. For Brighton, they put in a decent enough performance to merit a draw against Newcastle last week, but they come into this off the back of back-to-back away defeats. Meanwhile, Wolves come into this off the back of 3 home wins in a row. So I think we have to consider Wolves the early favourites here. That said, it's probably too big an ask for Wolves to actually close down anyone in this race for Europe. They are far too far back, whereas Brighton are right in the thick of it. We've already talked about Fulham, we've already talked about Brentford, and Brighton are right in there in that race for 8th place as well. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for either side, but both sides could have players back from injury, with Strand Larsen and Matoma respectively expected to return for this one. João Pedro remains injured. A reminder that as things stand, Brighton, like I say, they're 1 point off 8th, so they're going to be up for this. Wolves, though, I think are the team on much better form, and I think the way they're playing, they're going to come away with another victory here. I'm going for a 2-1 victory to Wolves. Once all of those teams have played, the late kickoff is between Bournemouth and Aston Villa, and if Fulham, Brentford and Brighton all win, Bournemouth will start this game in 11th place. That is how close things are at the moment for Aston Villa. Obviously, they're still trying to hunt down the Champions League places, but don't want to give away any ground in their current position, which is in the Europa League or the Europa Conference League, depending on what happens in the FA Cup final, etc, etc. I think this is going to be a really interesting one, because what's crucial for Aston Villa is they have the advantage in regards to the fact that they're playing on Saturday night before Newcastle and Chelsea play each other on Sunday. If Aston Villa get the win here, they will go level on points with Newcastle and Chelsea, but with an inferior goal difference, unless they win like 10-0 or something, which, let's be honest, is not going to happen. They come into this, though, off the back of their victory against Fulham. Bournemouth come into this off the back of their victory at the Emirates, and they're now 5 games unbeaten, are Bournemouth, coming into this game. So it's going to be a really, really interesting one. In terms of the team news, big loss for Aston Villa. It's been confirmed that Yuri Tillemans is set to miss the next couple of weeks. He is struggling to make the final day of the season against Manchester United. He is definitely out of this weekend. For Bournemouth, it looks like they could be without Dango Ouattara. He went off injured at the Emirates last week in their victory over Arsenal. So both sides could be without key players that have performed really well for them this season. To be honest, I can't split these two sides right now. It was a 1-1 draw at Villa Park earlier on this season. It was a 2-2 draw here last season. And with both sides needing the win, I can see this being an absolute classic football match where, sure, one team could nick it one way or another. I think all 3 results are possible. So I just think the safest bet in those sort of situations is to say both teams are likely to score, and the most likely result is going to be a draw. So I'm going to go for another 2-2 victory between these two sides. If I was going to pick a favourite, I'd just go for Aston Villa, but we shall see. Which then takes us on to what has to be the biggest game of the weekend. It is Newcastle taking on Chelsea and a midday kickoff on Sunday. Newcastle, as we just mentioned, drew last week against Brighton, a 1-1 draw for them, which has seen them slip in their race for Europe. Chelsea have quietly been going about their business and have won their last 3 Premier League games in a row, including beating champions Liverpool last week, and then they qualified for the Europa Conference League final with another victory over Jurgens last night, resting again the vast majority of their first team players. They are going to be fresh coming into this game against Newcastle. Newcastle themselves do have still Joelinton out injured. It doesn't look like he's going to be making it back for this one. And he's been a massive miss for them in that midfield over the last couple of weeks. And if you look at the performance that the likes of Cole Palmer and Enzo Fernandez were putting in last week against Liverpool, I think without Joelinton, this could be a real problem for Newcastle coming into this game. Chelsea did win the reverse fixture 2-1 earlier on this season. And Newcastle... But, sorry, get my words right. To be fair, Newcastle have also beaten Chelsea this season with victory in the League Cup at St James's Park. They've also won their last 3 games at home to Chelsea in the league. So there is a definite chance that Newcastle still get the victory here. But I just think with Chelsea over the last few weeks, they've just been, like I say, they've been quietly building themselves up with results after results after results. I'm not convinced Chelsea are going to go to St James's and get a win. But I am convinced they're going to come away with at least a point. I'm going for a 1-1 draw for Newcastle and Chelsea this weekend. That then takes us to the middle of the day kickoffs. We have 3 2:15 kickoffs in the Premier League on Sunday. And the first of those is Manchester United taking on West Ham. For United, it is now 6 league games in a row without a victory after defeat at Brentford last week. To be fair, though, West Ham are 8 league games without a victory after their draw with Spurs, which means they managed to continue their incredible trend of going lose, draw, lose, draw, lose, draw, lose, draw, which means, in theory, they should lose this one, because that would then be the 9th game, so it would be back to them losing again. And to be honest, after what happened with Manchester United last night and their 4-1 victory over Bilbao, their 7-1 victory on aggregate, the pressure's kind of been really lifted off now, with all focus now switching to the Europa League final in 2 weeks' time. It stands to reason that with both this game and the Tottenham game that we'll talk about shortly, the sides will more than likely play their first teams this weekend, then play their reserve teams next weekend ahead of that Europa League final on the Wednesday the week after. So for me, I think Manchester United will be relatively strong here. I can still see them making some changes, maybe put Mason Mount in and Kobbie Mainoo after their impressive performances off the bench last night. For West Ham, they have no fresh concerns, but like I say, they're just not performing at the moment. They did win the reverse fixture at the London Stadium, but Manchester United have won the last 4 at Old Trafford against West Ham. So I think a Manchester United win is probably the most likely result here. I'm going for a 2-1 victory to Manchester United. Which then takes us back to the battle for Champions League football once again. And this one is Nottingham Forest taking on Leicester. And for Forest, it was more dropped points last week. To be fair, I predicted them to lose to Palace. And they did manage to get a 1-1 draw thanks to that. Some would say fluky, some would say clever goal from Murillo last week. I'll let you guys make that decision in the comments section. For Leicester, they finally picked up a win with their victory over Southampton. But, I mean, how much merit does a victory over Southampton have at this point of the season? To be honest, I don't think I need to say too much about this one. I think we all expect Nottingham Forest to get the victory here. Yes, they do have a couple of injury concerns. Hudson-Odoi watched the game from the crowd against Crystal Palace. He's not likely to be back for this one. And of course, Murillo went off with an injury after his goal that could see him miss this one. No fresh concerns for Leicester, but also with their injury concerns at the moment, no injured players coming back for this game either. Forest won the reverse fixture 3-1 earlier on this season. I think we all expect Forest to get the victory here. I'm going for a 2-0 victory to Nottingham Forest. Then the final middle of the day game on Sunday sees Tottenham taking on Crystal Palace. Spurs with a very, very good victory over Bodo Glimt last night. I predicted Bodo Glimt to win that game given Bodo's record at home. But you've got to give credit where it's due. Spurs got the job done and they have got to the Europa Conference League final to take on Manchester United in 2 weeks' time. But they are still 4 league games without a win after they drew with West Ham last week. For Palace, they also drew last week, which means it is 3 draws in a row for Palace in the league, and actually 5 games without a win for them in the league, but obviously they did have that impressive FA Cup win a couple of weekends ago. Let's not forget that the FA Cup final is next weekend. We didn't really speak about it when it comes to the Manchester City-Southampton game because I think City could probably still change their entire team and still beat Southampton. Meanwhile, Crystal Palace, their priority has to be getting into Europe via that FA Cup. I say getting into Europe. Their priority is winning the FA Cup. The bonus is that they would qualify for Europe from it. And I think even if they do play their full first team, those players' minds are going to be on that FA Cup final next weekend. So I would be surprised if we see the likes of Eza, Mateta, Munoz, etc. in the starting lineup. But if they do play, I still think they're going to be dialing it in a little bit. There is also a concern for them surrounding Adam Wharton. He went off injured last week, and I don't think that Glasner are going to want to risk any of his other key players ahead of such a big game for them. For Spurs, no fresh injury concerns. They actually managed to make it through the game against Bodo last night with no new injury concerns. But obviously, the question mark still surround Heung-min Son as to when he is going to be back and available. Some say it's going to be for this game, but we shall see. I'm going to go for a Spurs victory here. They've won all of the last 9 home games against Crystal Palace, but Palace did win the reverse fixture 1-0. But I think with everything that's going on right now, I think Spurs should be considered the favourites for this one. I'm going for a 3-1 victory to Tottenham. And then finally, it is, of course, the main event. Liverpool take on Arsenal. And for Liverpool, they lost for only the 3rd time in the Premier League this season against Chelsea. But let's be honest, they did play near enough a full reserve team in that match to give some players some more legs, to give the likes of Chiesa the opportunity to get a winner's medal at the end of the season. For Arsenal, they've lost 3 times this week, losing to PSG twice and Bournemouth in between. But, you know, if we hear what Declan Rice has to say, Arsenal were the best team in the competition. So who am I to question that? But look, their UCL credentials are in a bit of jeopardy here. We said about it last week. They are not safe from dropping out of the Champions League places. To be fair, they probably only need one more win to secure it. But they're at Anfield this week. They're playing Newcastle next week. They've not won in the league significantly for a while. They beat Ipswich with 10 men, but they've not won. I think that's their only win in their last 5 in the league. They have a horrendous record against Liverpool. They haven't won at Anfield since 2012. So I think we're all in agreement here that Liverpool are surely going to take the victory here. They're going to humiliate Arsenal by making them do a guard of honour before the match as well. And they're going to have their full first team back and rested after not playing against Chelsea. Meanwhile, Arsenal's full first team played midweek against Paris Saint-Germain. I can't see any other result than a Liverpool win here. That's where I'm going. I was going to say 3-1. I've done 2-1. I've gone on the side of caution just in case Liverpool are not quite at it and they still do make changes. 2-1, I've gone for Liverpool to round off today's predictions. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. Thank you very much for watching as always. I will be back with more predictions next week. We've got the semi-final second legs to cover. If you become a member, we've got more La Liga predictions coming for you in midweek as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again very, very soon.